3 statistical secrets that you need to know heading into the Bahrain Grand Prix. Welcome to the Pit Wall, your stop for fantasy Formula One content. You can like and subscribe for more content like this. I'm J-Jack, and let's go. The first statistical secret is the night race. There is a normal pattern in preparation for a race. You have free practice session 1 where the cars are trying to get used to the circuit, free practice session 2 when they start doing long runs for race simulation, and then free practice session 3 when they are doing quali simulations in preparation for their maximum performance in qualifying, which will set the grid for the race. Bahrain, because it's a night race, means that the later you do your practice session in the day, the closer you are to qualifying and race performance. That means free practice session 1 and free practice session 3 are during the daylight hours. Free practice session 2 is at night. That means it's important when you're looking for teams and their maximum performance, their quali pace, you want to look at free practice session 2. So let's kick it over to the spreadsheet to see how are these teams performing compared to preseason testing. You can find the link in the description below. Look for the tab 21 verse 22, and then you can see what we are looking at right now. On the left, you see the preseason testing. It took 3 days. I took the average position based off of the times from each day that they participated. Also recorded their fastest lap. As you can see, I've highlighted Verstappen, Sainz, Norris, and Hamilton. And then we can see how they then look after free practice session 2 with the fastest lap times that they were gearing up for qualifying. Verstappen is 0.2 slower during free practice session 2, but still top of the timesheets. Notice Sainz, still 3rd fastest. He was averaging position was 6th during preseason testing, but that still made him the 3rd best option. And then we go down to Hamilton. He was 11th, now he's jumped up to 9th. Norris, who was 8th, has dropped to 11th. As you can see here, certain drivers have been able to improve as they prepare for this race. But that means the top pick is going to be Ferrari. Let's scroll down to how the teams are looking. Ferrari, the average position between the two drivers was 5th. After free practice session 2, 2.5. By far the best average position for a constructor. And they are much cheaper than Red Bull and Mercedes, who are averaging 4th and 6.5 respectively. One driver that is a huge standout that you can still keep on watch is Mick Schumacher. He was 0.8 slower during FP2 than he was during preseason testing. If he was able to get close to what he was during preseason testing, he could go from 8th all the way up to qualify P4. Just put that in perspective. A Haas could potentially be top 6. Other drivers to take note of is Gasly. We see that he was averaging position was 7th during preseason testing and has dropped down to 13th fastest during FP2. He only gained 0.3 seconds. That means that other drivers have been able to gain more time and have been outperforming him. Same with Norris, same with Stroll. Drivers that actually improved times from preseason testing to free practice session 2, but other people were still able to leapfrog them. If we look at the lineups as they stand right now, you could say these are the drivers that you want to get. Ones that are going to be in the top 6. The second statistical secret is engine power. It's the beginning of the season. You only have a $100 million budget. How are you going to spend it? Who are you going to pick up on your team? I want you to be aware of an interesting statistic that became apparent during free practice session 2. 5 of the 6 Ferrari-powered cars were in the top 10. The only one, Guan Yu Zhou, who is a rookie. Compare that with the Mercedes. Only 2 of the 8 Mercedes were able to make it into the top 10. And guess what? They were the Mercedes themselves. McLaren, Aston Martin, Williams, none of them were able to crack into the top 10. Now, another thing that has really changed since last season and this season are DNFs. A driver that gets a DNF during the race, that is now added into the total for the constructor. That means if you have teams that have engines that are not stable, then that means that constructor is going to lose more and more points. This is another reason when you're looking at your constructor, who is more likely to go the full season without taking huge engine changes. Last season, Mercedes was notorious trying to take a lot of engines to catch up against the Red Bulls. That means that if something like that were to happen again this season, that constructor and the 2 drivers, Russell Hamilton, are likely going to be taking hits as the season progresses. Another fascinating thing is when you're looking at a smaller team like Haas. Over the last season, the errors were all driver, none with the engine. Now you could say they're at the back of the pack, they're not blowing out their engine. Well, look at Alfa Romeo. Were they blowing up their engine and they were still fighting, trying to get into the top 10. We have this engine that was reliable with Leclerc and Sainz, and that means that those drivers, that constructor, are going to be solid options going into the season. Now, then you would have to then decide, are the drivers safe? Are the drivers going to crash into people? Because if not, then that means they can make that engine last even longer. Here are my value picks. I'm going to share with you drivers, how much they cost, and then here is the rationale for why they are probably really good picks. First, Bottas. He costs 9 million. Let's say we're in a perfect world where you get 1 point per million. That would be a PPR of 9 points per race. So the question is, Bottas, who was able to outperform Hamilton during the free practice session 2 time, if he was able to get in the top 10, what is the likelihood he would be able to score more than 9 points? That's very good, because most people who get in the top 10 score in the teens. That means if Bottas is getting greater than 9 PPR, he is a good opportunity for your team. Let's look at Alonso. Alonso, who was higher up last season, he has a cost of 12.5 million. So then you have to ask yourself, does he get more than 12.5 PPR? That is a little decision that you have to make. There's only 2 cars on this grid that have a Renault engine. That's the Alpine, Fernando Alonso, and Esteban Ocon. Do you think that Alonso is going to be able to keep the position that he's going to start at the race? He also was setting a faster time than Hamilton. And now on to perhaps the greatest value picks going into this race, Mick Schumacher and Kevin Magnussen. Schumacher with 6.5 million and Magnussen with 5.5 million. Ask yourself, 2 guys with times that could put them into the top 10. Like I said, normally you get 15 points or so when you are finishing in the top 10. If they are able to exceed or double their PPR, they are must picks for your team, because then you can use that salary cap gap to be able to afford other drivers or a better constructor to have them on your team. Now for the risky picks, Gasly and Tsunoda. They were right next to each other, 13th and 14th fastest times in FP2. And yes, they do have the Red Bull engine, which seems to be very strong, but with their cost, are they going to be worth it? Because if they may lose positions, then no, there are better options to have on your team. Maybe if you think that they're going to improve in FP3, that seems like they're getting better pace unlocked, but it seems like they are risky picks at this time. I know Gasly, just to put this in perspective, Gasly was averaging 5th or 6th in qualifying every single race last season. He being outside the top 10, that's red flags for someone who costs even more than he did last year. The third statistical secret is team composition. As I've just hinted at the value of Mick Schumacher and Kevin Magnussen, let's use that as a launch pad. They are cheaper by about 10 million than other midfield teams that were getting your mid 15 to 18 points last season. That means that if you are saving 10 million per pick, that is 20 million that you could then use somewhere else on your team. What could you use having those other positions? Sainz, who's 6th highest price, and Leclerc, which is 4th highest. Think about that. They are cheaper than the alternatives of the 2 Red Bulls and the 2 Mercedes, and both are under 20 million, which means that they can be turboed. Okay, this is why this is important, because you might look at a Hamilton or a Verstappen, which are 30 million plus. But then people say, what about Russell? Russell will fall into the same pit that Bottas did last year. Bottas was more than 20 million, which meant that he could not be turboed. Perez, who was not scoring as many points as Bottas, always scored more points than Bottas with a turbo. And that is the dilemma that we have with Russell. You have 2 Ferraris that currently have faster times than Russell. So you could have both of them. And you might say, well, what about the teammate bonuses? Okay, you get +2 points for beating your teammate in quali, and you get +3 points for beating your teammate during the race. That is a total of +5 points that Russell could get if he were able to beat Hamilton in both. If you have Sainz and Leclerc, you could lose 5 points because you know one of them is going to beat the other one. But on the flip side, you can turbo both of them, which means that the 5-point deficit would be overcome easily by turboing either Leclerc or Sainz. It's now time for my picks. I run 2 teams. The one on the left is supposed to be my steady team. The one on the right is supposed to be my day trading, my money-making team. But because of the great uncertainty with the new season, the new regulations, the new performances, I'm going to probably pick something similar for both teams and then commit. For my steady team, try to be disciplined. Don't be using a bunch of your substitutions. Whereas team 2, I'm going to be trying to make those trades to be able to get the value up. Last season, team 2 2 was able to gain 3 million more than Team 1. But both of them, over the course of the season, were able to get over 105 million. And Team 1 outperformed Team 2. Let us focus on what our lineups are. On the left, this was a lineup I changed when I found out that Sebastian Vettel got COVID and Hülkenberg would be taking his place. I was like, wow, Stroll will probably beat his teammate. Because Stroll is cheaper than Vettel, maybe I could afford Red Bull. And here is the lineup. But as you can see, I'm not going to stick with this lineup because while Red Bull may be good, Ferrari is clearly going to be a cheaper option and have a greater potential in adjusting their price if people haven't picked them already. So that leaves me with 7.5 million. If I switch Stroll and take off Perez, then let's see, now I have 34.5 million to work with. See why this is so difficult? Because if you pick up Verstappen, then I cannot pick any other driver up. So in this case, if I pick Mick Schumacher, that means 28 million. Now I said before, don't pick up George Russell. Well, maybe this would be the option to pick up George Russell since I can't afford Verstappen. That means I would want to be able to gain an extra 2.5 million in order to upgrade from Russell to Verstappen. Is Russell going to raise up in value? Maybe not, but if he does better than Sergio Perez and he beats his teammate, that might be a good option. Well, let's save that team for right now, and we're going to turbo Leclerc. Team number 2, where I actually am trying to get Verstappen on here. Gasly, I no longer have enough faith in. Well, I might as well switch him out with Sainz. Yes, I understand that my budget is over. Then we take off Albon and we pick up someone like Bottas. Let's see. We cannot afford Verstappen. Pick up Schumacher. I now have 19 million. That's such a huge difference. Let's say I go with Red Bull. I have 11 million over. See, this is the difficulty of having that. Let's see. I could go Red Bull and I could go Perez. See how this seems like the lineups are going to be very similar? So if I go to Ferrari, pick them up, well, what other option? Let's say I drop Magnussen because Schumacher will beat his teammate, right? Then I have to be disciplined to say that Magnussen is going to raise in value as time goes on. I have 33 million. I have 2 other drivers. Well, let's say instead of going with Russell, I go with Perez. Well, then 16 million. Norris, probably not worth. Ricciardo, not worth. Maybe I pick up Fernando Alonso? It just seems like no matter how I do it, this is not going to be as good as you would want it to be. Look at all that cap space. But if the cap space means that I'm going to raise, because people pick up Schumacher, Magnussen, and Bottas up, and then they suddenly gain value, then I can trade them off and pick up better players. But it seems like at this time, picking up a strong driver might end up being that option. I still have 4 million left over. Wow, this could all change. That's crazy to think that I've got that much sitting on the table. Oh man. Put in the description below what lineups are you thinking about, who you want to put on your team, how are you going to maximize your gap. Like I said, having some money on the table isn't a problem because if I need to make my substitutions, I can pick up another driver. Like to promo for you our seasonal long league. Last season, we had 280 or so that joined. Look at that, 451 at this time. And this league is designed for you to be able to learn, see people's lineups, see how they're doing, see what their strategies are. And it's great to be able to have everyone a part of the community to grow and learn together. Link will be in the description below. Put in the code. Now, if you want to be a part of our competitive scene, this is called the One Race Challenge. Every race, I will make a new league. And once we get at least 10 people to join, I'm able to make a custom graphic like I did here. One Race Challenge means that you have one team submission. We take the top 3 scoring and we have on our spreadsheet a leaderboard. You get 25 points for gold, 18 points for a silver, 15 points for a bronze. Yes, there can be ties. That means that you are able to jump in at any point of the season and have a shot at getting the highest score. This allows a different type of strategy as you submit your teams throughout the season. Want to continue this conversation? You can follow us on Twitter, link in the description below. We have launched a Discord, find the link in the description below. If you would like to support us and all the work that goes into making this content for you, you can support us on Patreon. It's great to have you. Looking forward to the exciting season. And there you have it, an analytical deep dive as we prepare for the Bahrain Grand Prix. Don't forget, still pay attention to free practice session 3. Notice the trends of the teams and the drivers. And until next time, I'll see you on the pit wall.